The last system of vertebrates is the reproductive system. And we're going to focus on the human reproductive system today, but it's important to note that reproductive systems among vertebrates differ. There is internal fertilization in many vertebrates, including snakes and lizards and birds and mammals, but in fish and amphibians, reproduction is external, i.e. the eggs are laid outside the body and then the eggs are fertilized by the male. And you can see what's going on here with these two froggies. They're in a state of amplexus or mating position. It looks like it might be internal fertilization going on there, but the female lays eggs outside the body and then the male fertilizes them once they're laid. So we'll look at all these things today: anatomy, physiology, development of sperm, development of eggs, the union of sperm and egg, development, pregnancy, and childbirth. Looking at reproductive anatomy with human female, you have ovaries. Ovaries contain follicles that nurture eggs, and all of the eggs that a female has for her entire life are there at birth. They just mature one at a time after puberty once a month. Remember that ovaries are exocrine glands and endocrine glands because they also secrete hormones that makes them an endocrine gland. They secrete estrogens and progesterones. When eggs are mature, they move through the fallopian tubes, also called the oviduct. And oviducts convey eggs to the uterus. And fertilization typically occurs somewhere along in the oviduct if sperm are present. You have a narrow opening at the end of the uterus called the cervix. Okay, this whole thing is called the womb. This is where the zygote will grow into an embryo and eventually a fetus. The endometrium is the lining of the uterus, and the vagina is the pathway for sperm to enter into the reproductive tract of the female. So the uterus is important in the development of the fertilized egg, opens to the vagina. The vagina receives the penis during intercourse where sperm can fertilize the egg. It also forms the birth canal where the fetus will be born into a new human. If you look at the other direction of the system, you can see the ovaries, the oviducts, the uterus. This is part of the excretory system, the urinary bladder, pubic bone, which is important for protecting all of this. You have the clitoris, which is analogous to the male penis. Okay, this is for excitatory purposes. It's like the penis. Two folds around the vagina. Bartholin's gland is secretes a lubricating fluid to help the penis enter the vagina. There's cervix, and of course, this is part of the digestive system. In ovulation, an egg cell is released from a follicle at the surface of the ovary. And you can see this is the process of ovulation. An egg is released from a follicle in the ovary. And if it encounters a sperm, it could potentially be fertilized. And of course, this occurs every 28 days after puberty. In the human male, you have the testes, which produce sperm, And they're located outside of the abdominal cavity within the scrotum. And that's important because sperm are highly sensitive to high temperatures. They cannot survive within the body cavity at 98.6. Sperm need cooler temperatures. Semen is expelled through different ducts during ejaculation, and they carry, nourish, and support the sperm cells. If you look at the male reproductive system, you have the urinary bladder, which is part of the excretory system. You have the prostate gland, which is surrounding that. And this is problematic in older males when this might enlarge and restrict urine flow. But what the prostate gland does is take sperm coming from the coming down here through the seminal vesicle, mixing with a fluid to produce semen that will be used along with sperm, which are produced in the testes, stored in the epididymis. You have two tracks that come and move the sperm together with the semen produced here and a lubricating fluid in the bulbourethral gland to be ejaculated out through the penis. So you have two testes, two epididymi, right, to store sperm, two vas deferens, and they all connect with the supporting glands during ejaculation of sperm. The penis has smooth muscle, which when relaxed fills with blood to create an erection. And here is a cutaway view and showing all of these things that I just explained in a different view. In spermatogenesis, you have the production of sperm. You have primary spermatocytes, which produce sperm. Okay. The whole idea of spermatogenesis is to increase genetic variation, because during their reproductive years that they're produced, they undergo meiosis to form haploid sperm cells. And during meiosis, you have different genetic combinations produced that not all sperm are exactly alike in terms of their genome. You have Leydig cells, which produce testosterone, and Sertoli cells, which also support these spermatocytes. Spermatids are tiny little sperm ready to go during ejaculation. In oogenesis, most of this occurs during the ovaries. Again, a lifetime supply of eggs at birth. Monthly formation of an oocyte mature to become what's called a secondary oocyte. If this secondary oocyte is fertilized, it then completes meiosis, unlike sperm, which do it before they're produced, and becomes haploid ovum. In the ovarian follicle, the follicles, of course, are going to help support the eggs as they develop. Okay, so you start up here with a primary oocyte within the follicle. It starts to grow and mature, and then eventually ruptures and sends out a secondary oocyte, an egg. Once this follicle is ruptured, it becomes what's called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum refers to yellow because it's yellow in color. So it's a yellow body. And what this organ does is it produces a progesterone that maintains the uterine lining in case of pregnancy. If there's no fertilization, this degenerates. Many hormones are important in the ovarian and menstrual cycles. Follicle releasing hormone produced by the hypothalamus regulates two other important hormones, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. And these, in both of them, stimulate growth of the follicles or growth of production of secondary oocytes, and are important in the development of the corpus luteum. Estrogen, promotes the endometrium lining, thickening of the endometrium lining. This is where the egg, fertilized egg, zygote, will implant if there is fertilization. And then estrogen and progesterone maintain the endometrium and will stop the cycle going any further if there is pregnancy. So in the ovarian cycle, you have production of the egg, assisted in the follicle, ovulation, corpus luteum. If it degenerates, then that leads to, if there's no fertilization, the endometrium lining is going to be shed, during menstruation. And then there'll be a thickening period again, and the cycle continues. You can see these hormones spike: estrogen at ovulation, progesterone here at this post-ovulatory phase. Now, one thing about being sexually active, if you're sexually active with people that might be infected with disease, you could get them too. And so all of these things that you probably have heard of include things like gonorrhea, syphilis. These are problems that can be treated with antibiotics. These are viral diseases here, which cannot be cured by antibiotics, but have different types of drugs or treatments. You have protozoan diseases and fungal diseases as well. Not fun. To prevent fertilization, there are different ways of contraception. You can block the release of gametes. You can have tubal ligation, which keeps the egg from moving down the fallopian tubes or oviducts. You can have a vasectomy for males, which clips the vas deferens. Sperm cannot get to the penis. You can prevent fertilization, and a lot of these here are shown. Condoms, cervical caps, right? They prevent sperm and egg from meeting. Or you can prevent implantation. You can have implants in the uterus that keep the egg from moving, attaching to the uterine lining. So you have an IUD, for example, or different types of implants. If sperm reach the egg, it's a contest to see who gets in there first. And you can see that there are millions of sperm produced in a single ejaculate, and only one of them, well, sometimes two, but usually only one of them can make it into the egg. And of course, the male has X or Y sperm. Female have XX. So if a male sperm is an X, kind of fertilize an egg and produce a female. If the male sperm is a Y chromosome, has a Y chromosome, it will make a male. So during fertilization, you have the sperm approaching the egg. It's got a fluid that is going to be able to digest the egg's jelly coat within what's called an acrosome. These enzymes allow for the sperm to penetrate that jelly coat. It's going to bind to the receptor protein molecules of the egg and fuse the plasma membrane. And then the sperm enters the egg into the cytoplasm and joins with the egg nucleus to produce a zygote. After that, there's a fertilization envelope that forms that keeps other sperm from penetrating the egg. There you have the fusion of sperm and egg to create a zygote. In human development, pregnancy is, gestation is another name for pregnancy. It begins at conception, i.e. sperm and egg joining. You go from an egg to a fertilized egg, a zygote, to an embryo, which is a small beginning of a human, and then a fetus, which is a fairly fully developed human, but still needs some time to finish development. Gestation typically is on average 266 days, all right, 9 months. Mouse are different. They only have a gestation period of 1 month. Elephant pregnancy is 22. So you get human development beginning with fertilization, typically in the oviduct. In some cases, the embryo will start to develop within the oviduct rather than getting all the way to the uterus. It's called an ectopic pregnancy. And the only thing to do is surgery at that point to get it removed, because you can't have development of the fetus within a tube. Once you have implantation, you start to develop what's called a blastocyst, a ball of cells, rapidly dividing cells, which begins to gastrulate and develop into a fully formed human. The embryo floats within an amniotic cavity filled with fluid that protects this developing human. And humans aren't the only amniotes have amniotic eggs. They include reptiles and birds and other mammals. But you also have chorion and embryonic mesoderm, which are together form part of the placenta, which is the interface between the mother's blood system and the developing fetus. The placenta has protective antibodies. Allows for substances to pass through, including protective antibodies. But other bad things can pass through. Viruses like German measles, HIV. So if the mother has HIV, the fetus can get infected too. Drugs, both prescription and non-prescription. Alcohol, which is a problem. It can affect development of the fetus negatively. You have what's called fetal alcohol syndrome. Chemicals, smoking. So when females are pregnant, especially when they first discover they're pregnant in the first trimester, it's very important to restrict these things that you do not want to pass into the fetal bloodstream, because it can negatively affect the fetus. And that's in the first trimester when most of the important development occurs. So you have 3 trimesters. First trimester, first 3 months. This is the most rapid change during the whole development of pregnancy. This is when most things are happening. In the second trimester, you have mostly an increase in size, a refinement of human features. And in the third trimester, it's really getting ready for birth. One important part of childbirth is the secretion of a hormone called oxytocin, estrogen from the ovaries induces oxytocin receptors in the uterus. Oxytocin is produced that stimulates the uterus to contract. And it stimulates the placenta to make another type of hormone called prostaglandins. So increasing stimulation, creating a positive feedback cycle where eventually you have contractions increasing in frequency and strength that is going to allow for the fetus to move through the birth canal. This whole process is called labor. You have dilation of the cervix, that neck of the uterus. Full dilation is when you have 10 centimeters, which is 2.5 inches. This is the longest stage of labor. It can last for hours. In the second stage, you have expulsion. And this is when the fetus is delivered. You have contractions every 2 to 3 minutes, pushing down on the abdominal muscles. And this takes about 20 minutes. Finally, you have delivery of the placenta. And this occurs 15 minutes after birth. The placenta, the umbilical cord is cut. They're liberated from the placenta. And hormones are still important. You start to have decreased levels of progesterone and estrogen to return to pre-pregnancy. But oxytocin and prolactin are hormones that will stimulate the female to produce milk. Finally, you have reproductive technology options. Hormone therapy, if there is low production of sperm or release of eggs, that can help create more opportunities for production. If you have blockage of oviducts, for example, surgery can correct that. And there's also assisted reproductive technology. You can unite the sperm and egg outside of the body in a test tube or some other vessel, allow for fertilization to occur, and then implant that egg into the uterus again. If in some cases the female is not capable of supporting pregnancy in the uterus, you can implant an egg from male and female into another female and allow for that female to finish the process of reproduction of gestation. Okay, and that will do it for the last and final lecture. And we'll see you all